Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Introduce yourself. Tell us where you live and what you do.
Sure. And thanks. I live in Dallas, Texas. We just chatted about you being from here, and I've been here since 2006 and originally from Cleveland, Ohio. So about half my life has been spent in Dallas. And business-wise, I own a company called Prospect Direct. We specifically are in the franchise niche, so help franchise brands and consultants acquire new franchisees. So we are in the marketing lead generation space since 2018. And prior to that, I had a career in franchising, worked at restaurants such as TGI Fridays and Which Wich. And restaurants, franchising, lead generation is the career path.
Awesome. So how did you get into franchising in the first place?
Tripped into it by accident, but really through restaurants. Like I was a bartender in college, busboy before that, had a couple entry-level jobs, but then became a buyer at TGI Fridays. And then that path sent me like around the world helping franchisees with their supply chains. And that's how I really got hooked into both the international side and working with franchisees in that business model.
I'm curious more about like your business today. Can you just give an example of like a use case of, if you can mention a client that you work with, or even like a broad example and like how you exactly help them?
Yeah. And when we started, it was mostly food brands, such as like we helped Little Caesars like expand an international market. So they would come to us, be like, we want to go to, Thailand, UK, these markets that we're not already in. We would identify what we call seven-figure earner, like kind of millionaires to qualify as master franchisees. And then we would run personalized campaigns announcing that their brand was expanding their local market. And then we would hand off those leads to the franchise development person at the brand, and then they would work them. So I really developed that solution when I was at Which Wich for myself. Like I was in that role. So I think like a lot of companies, the ones that have the best chance of succeeding are if you've solved a problem that you solved actually for yourself in a job or a role, because it's really an authentic solution. You're not just trying to, make something up to make money. You actually were solving a problem. So initial clients were that kind of like more food brands. Now, man, like senior care brands, a place at home, like different clients, amazing, like brands that are in the kids tutoring senior care space, a lot of home services brands. So especially over COVID, a lot of franchising shifted to like home services got really popular. Just restaurants, there was a challenge economic model for them with real estate closing down for COVID, labor rates increasing, just a margin squeeze, which I think, they're really starting to recover out of a little bit now. The good restaurants are able to take price. But traditionally, I don't know about you, but when you hear the word franchise, you kind of think of like McDonald's, Burger King, like traditionally that 70% of franchise brands now are not restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, like an example, like a Little Caesar would come and say, hey, Alex, we want to expand to, South America or something in this country where we haven't been in. And then you would, essentially run the ads on Facebook and Instagram over there to try and target people who have the net worth that qualify, who would be, potential customers, or I guess clients for them to take over as franchise owners.
Pretty much. I'll correct you on the one thing. We don't actually use social channels anymore. Originally, we used like a Facebook targeted audience and then LinkedIn and then email. Since 2020, we were purely email. So we are like email specialists hunkering down just on that channel and doing a lot of campaigns, a lot of testing to be effective at it.
So do you target people that are already in the franchise space, or just people who like, based on like, I guess like, what do you kind of look for in your targeting? Because obviously there is many different people who are of means across the world, but obviously not all of them would be candidates to be franchise owners. So what do you kind of look for from that standpoint?
Yeah, certainly like existing franchisees are in the pool of candidates, but I mean, they make up less than 1% because the pool of people that, ideally a franchise is able to be a turnkey system, kind of a business in a box that can appeal to people um, who are just ready for that leap in their career. A lot of times from a corporate job and whatnot, and it has the model and the systems and the proven processes built in. So we differentiated ourselves though by going out to audiences really that are people that are mid-level career or above, so upper executives, director, VP, CXOs, owners. And then that also implies usually that they have some sort of savings or a decent financial credit score, things like that, so that they can actually take action. Traditionally, a lot of the lead generation in franchising has been done by what's called portals that are like directories where you kind of choose what you think you'd like and your skills, but they don't really qualify people up front. And you get a lot of tire kickers and people that just really can't take action at this point in their career on a brand that's maybe a few $100,000 to invest in. We've eliminated that layer of people so that the brands are really talking to people that can take action.
So how do you work when you're talking with international markets, right? Because obviously in different countries they have different languages. So do you do everything in English, or do you have people like local translators in those countries? What does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to be clear, we're probably 97% domestic at this point, even though we
Okay.
started with international. But when we do go international, we do it in English. We do not translate, and it's intentional because we most of U.S. brands being our customers, their training materials, their personnel, their headquarters speaks English, and if the franchisee speaks English, there's already so many variables in adapting a brand in a different country. If they truly can't speak English, it's such a hurdle. You know, only the top maybe 5, 10 franchise brands can really afford the personnel to customize, languages. They'd have to already have a bunch of operations going in that region. And then it's just a different hub and spoke model at that point once they're that mature internationally.
Makes sense. So in terms of your client base, like what's the breakdown of, percentage of actual franchise businesses versus like brokers who are third party helping find people for those companies?
Yeah, another good question. We're about 50-50 now. We started out 100% brands, and I had never used a franchise consultant. Most of them refer to themselves as franchise consultants, but it's brokers is synonymous. And I had to really discover like how they work and their function, but they've become more and more prominent, especially with service brands like home services. That's kind of a lot of their bread and butter is that space within franchising, and that's become 50% of our business now. Mhm.
Right. And then when you're going to go and book a call with somebody, I mean, obviously, I'm sure that there's some level of like additional qualifications. So before somebody even books a call, I mean, are you asking, I'm assuming, like, do you have this much money to invest, et cetera? Because obviously, it's like even these, consultants and these companies' time is valuable. They don't just want to be taking calls and finding out like on the call per se.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a fine line, to be honest. We have a few competitors that do call verified leads, and they are asking those questions. They're also charging 250 and up sometimes per lead. We've found that by really limiting who we let into the original funnel of who we target, it takes care of enough of that, and especially with brokers, they have enough brands that are in the like kind of 100,000, 150,000 range that they actually like to have some people that maybe you know don't have a net worth that's that much. Other times they do. So we actually don't do like income filter. Also, It's just people lie too. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's a challenge.
um,
Like asking that question because some people don't want to disclose that.
yeah, we do have a lot of our customers that are on a calendar invite appointment upgrade, and in that we do ask additional questions, but we don't get into income verification just because of those two things. We screen up front, and the reliability of what people say, it can be misleading, and then all of a sudden we're in a situation where it's like, well, do we give a refund? Whose word are we taking for it afterwards? It's just a lot cleaner to honestly charge like a lower price point and filter up front is kind of the balance we found.
Yeah, because I think it's even like for some people might not have all that money saved up. There's like other ways for them to get into it. I mean, if they have good credit, they can finance the business. There are other ways for people to get into franchising besides just paying in cash.
Yeah, there's also couples, there's family money, there's parents that supplement it. There's so many different financial situations, partnerships that come into play after the initial interest. Um, Funding within franchising has its own. I mean, there's the traditional big banks, but there's a lot of lenders that are just in franchising and dealing with SBA loans, and they really specialize in like how to cater to the different kind of stratas of audiences.
Makes sense. So in terms of, and obviously it's 2025, there's always new trends in different industries. So what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing now in this space?
Um, Man, I just came from a conference actually this week in Fort Worth. Sustainable franchising, responsible franchising. Those are like a lot of the terms, and traditionally, it's been the way that people that have been in the business for decades have always operated, which is have your brand and then have your first few franchisees focus on making them successful, truly getting their P&Ls like to EBITDA that is sustainable without the owner being in the business, and then expand, one by one responsibly. And then, down the road, you can really multiply once your model's perfected. There's definitely a time period with interest rates, the zero interest rate era, where a lot of brands got very aggressive and sold a lot of franchises before opening a lot of them and got really ahead of themselves. Initially, some franchise brands can be location dependent. They can be successful here, and if you're selling many states where there's regional differences and it's not proven out yet, you're inviting risk into your system that isn't necessary if you do it the right way and prove it out in a bit slower, sustainable way. So we're seeing the brands. There's a thing called a franchise disclosure document, an FDD, and it has an item 19 in it. We're finding that the brands are being very cognizant of how their FDD looks, and that the buyers of franchises are becoming a lot more educated and wiser on how to read and look at those. They're asking ChatGPT, "Hey, look at this FDD for me and tell me what the red flags are." And that was like, a multi-month headache and lawyers involved in the past. ChatGPT can do pretty good at pointing things out and comparing FDDs and things now. So that's been a game changer. Is like everything AI is having its place in what should be making it healthier long term. To be honest, but I've always believed in the franchise model a lot. I mean, compared to I did a startup myself. Um, Luckily, I knew the problem I was solving exactly. But man, if I was off a little bit, if I didn't have like a model to follow, or I mean, so many ways to fail. I mean, yourself, I'm sure. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the franchise model, to your point, is proven to be successful. There's a lot of different types of franchises and different ways that people can get into it. And, especially if they're being, um, reached out to with high level information, kind of like what you're doing for your clients, there's lots of possibilities. So on that note, if you could go back in time to before you started this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
Okay. Before I started Prospect Direct, I just didn't know marketing very well, and maybe that's why I was so curious to start the business. It was just like I'd always thought marketing was a lot of fluff and a lot of like just presenting things and kind of salesmanship. And once it became digitalized, I got really fascinated by the science of it. Um, and I think I would have probably understood kind of like true direct direct marketing, like direct response marketing and branding. And I would have studied that and been able to have more intelligence conversations sooner on how we present ourselves as a solution and are crystal clear on what we do. And then also being able to have strategic partnerships with kind of more traditional broad agencies. And they a lot of times they white label or bring us in as partners to be able to do a specific thing, and then they do all the other things for the brand. We had a lot of clunky relationships in the beginning because I just didn't know the language that they were being spoken and how they were presenting internally and the politics involved in that. So I would say like direct response marketing versus traditional brand, kind of more broad marketing, is what I would have studied earlier.
So that's good advice. And if somebody watching this, as a broker or franchise owner or franchise business, and they wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way for somebody to reach you? Like your website, social media, email, whatever you can share.
Sure. Yeah, we're Prospect Direct pretty much everywhere. Prospect Direct on LinkedIn, Instagram, but prospectdirect.com. Our website has a lot of easy call to action buttons to schedule a call. Connie Wallace is our inside professional. She's been at franchising even longer than me, selling franchise. So she really is the screener to make sure that the brands or the consultants are a good fit for us. There's some that just are a little bit outside of what we do. So she really makes sure that there's going to be like a successful relationship, and she has an upfront call. So hit our website, and it's Connie at prospectdirect.com. It's the best way to get hold.
So Alex, thanks so much for your time today.
All right. Appreciate it, Dan. Thanks. See you later.